Cool. Thanks for coming back. Coming up next, we have Daniel Rezchuk. He has over 20 years of experience in the cybersecurity domain. He's currently a director at Fortify Labs, which is an Australian company focused on securing the connected systems that power our modern world, including vehicles, IoT, and operational technology. And prior to co-founding Fortify Labs, Daniel spent 15 years working in the Australian government, including serving as a technical director for computer network operations at the ASD. So Daniel is presenting on Under the Hood, the battle for security, safety, and privacy in a connected vehicle world. So can I please get a massive warm round of applause for Daniel Rezchuk.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. I was just saying, I was here 20 years ago as a graduate, and also it's changed a lot. I think the journey of cybersecurity and the attack surface has changed. So, yeah, it's exciting to be here. So today, really, there's a question of like, why do this? And really, I wanted to focus on raising concerns through evidence-based discussion. I really want this talk to be a catalyst for change. There's a lot of risks that we're highlighting, that I'm going to highlight, that we accept blindly. And even the last talk, a few questions at the end, they're going to drift into this. And there's a lot of really, I hope a lot of good questions at the end of like, wow, I can't believe that. So hopefully it starts some discussions and mitigations start to occur. So a little bit about my background. I'm from the offensive cyber world. I have a background in vulnerability research, exploit development, and paired with that, there's a lot of reverse engineering. So that's also drifted over the years into phone and vehicle forensics. And to do that, we do a lot of advanced data extraction. So that hopefully gives you an idea. This is hopefully not going to be a technical talk. Afterwards, grab me. I'm more than happy to deep dive as low as you want to go. But this is about highlighting issues and starting discussions. So I'm going to drift over a lot of the technical stuff, and we'll see where we end up. So what do we do at Fortify Labs? We're a research and evidence-based assessment company. We focus on connected vehicles. So we leverage 3 different access methods. So remote, near, and what's called close or physical, focusing on 3 distinct aspects. So we look at safety, we look at security, and we also look at privacy. The whole aim is to provide the customer with evidence so they can make informed decisions. So just to clarify, because these concepts may be not quite clear to some people, but remote access is your traditional remote attacker that sits on the internet. They don't have physical proximity to the target, so in this case, the vehicle. They actually have a wide reach, so you can sit in another country and if the target device is internet routable, you can sit there and target, from Asia, target something in Europe. But it's interesting, they have a wide reach, and there is a lower sort of risk of being detected, but also, because it's so easy to reach out, there's usually a lot of security that's placed onto this initial access. So usually it's patched well, or hopefully, ideally, it's patched well or patched better. Security is more focused on that because it's so easy for people to reach out. Near access, when we talk about that, we're looking at proximity to the target. So it could be Wi-Fi, it could be Bluetooth, but in terms of the vehicles, we also look at, how, from an RF point of view, does your remote, how does that work? Can we use that in some way to compromise the vehicle? So it's usually near or in proximity of the vehicle. And then close physical access, this is really hands-on. It requires the attacker to be actually get physically out and touch the vehicle. So it's things like plugging in USBs, it's actually unplugging something maybe and then plugging something else in. So think charging ports, think USB, think even your OBD port, your service port in the car. It's usually, what we're finding is less secure, and what I mean by that is it hasn't been pummeled by remote targeters. They're not getting port scanned, because it is risky. It's like breaking into a car. Physically, you've got to go up and touch it. So it is scary how sometimes this is an access method that is overlooked. So, really the average person doesn't, in some ways realise how much personal information on them the car is collecting. So rather than speculate, what we wanted to do was actually provide evidence. So what we decided to do was an experiment. We were like, can we buy a head unit from a second-hand vehicle, and could we extract personal data out of it? Enter the Ford Ranger. We went, well, let's just go pick the highest selling car and one of the most popular cars in Australia and see what we can do with it. So the idea was we're going to go hunt for a PX3 Ranger head unit from a wrecker and see what we could extract. But we also wanted to extract, after extracting, we also wanted to look at what does the actual Ford reset functionality do? And does it actually do what it says it's meant to do? So this is the Ford Sync 3. So this is the they call it an infotainment system. This is what lives in the PX3 Ranger. So this is the Ranger that's not the next gen. It's not connected in the sense of, what we say connected vehicles today, but it was a really interesting way to start looking at, well, what's in a not connected vehicle? So, quick search on eBay. Bang, $550. A week later, we had a PX3 infotainment system. So you detach the screen, and then what you're left with is this metal box, and pull that apart, and what we find is the PCB under there, and we've got to go hunting for the data. So the data in this case is stored on a flash chip. It's, in this case, a BGA 153, just numbers. You don't really need to worry about too much about it. They come in different number combinations. It just indicates the grid array, or the ball grid array, which are the little silver dots on the back of the chip. This is the same technology. It looks scary, but it's the same technology that's in a mobile phone. And it's the same technology that for years and years and years USBs have used. So it's fairly straightforward. We need to remove the chip. In this case, there's a number of ways to get data out, but I'll explain the method we use here of pulling the chip off with heat, essentially. So we heat up the chip. In this case, we're using a chip-off machine. You can do this with a $60 heat gun. We heat it up to the point where the solder melts, and then pull it off without pulling any of the pads or damaging the chip. And then we stick it in a reader, similar to this. Now this reader, this came from our days of doing phone forensics, and it's used to program replacement chips on phones. So we simply take the chip, we put it in there, and it has the beauty of also being able to read the data off the chip. So you can back the data up and then put it onto a new chip if you need it. So what did we find? So we found that the vehicle had detailed records of where it had driven, what phone calls were made, contact lists of connected phones, details of the phones that were synced with it, and thousands of start and stop locations. This is something we bought for $550 off eBay. This included about the owner. We were able to piece things together. We got their full name, their home address, their work address, call logs, contacts, phone numbers of family, travel, so, going to the shops, going to the gym, schools, all that sort of thing. And ultimately, the location of the accident that ended the Ranger's use. So this gives you an idea of the data that was pieced together. We have, details about the vehicle, the VIN, the mileage, all of that sort of stuff. Phones connected. We get a lot of speed data and driving data. So, indicator was turned on, or like start and stop of the engine, hard braking, and actually the emergency events is actually the collision, so we could see that. We got lots and lots of location data, and around that location data, even though this isn't a connected vehicle, it has a Wi-Fi functionality, so you can connect and upgrade things. We found that it was just scanning for access points, so there's a lot of access points. So what we found is we worked out the home and work address, and we actually had we got a Wi-Fi survey of all the Wi-Fi access points around the work and of the office and of the home. And even with the office, we're able to go, well, there's actually security cameras around there. So really crazy. There was actually 4 people had synced, so the family had synced all their phones to the car in various ways. There was a male who was the main owner, a partner, female, and then 2 adult children, and they just synced everything. So their call logs are there, their contact lists are there. So to give you an idea, this is an example, an extract of one of the full contact lists. Obviously redacted a bunch of stuff to protect identities, but we want to show this to actually, this is really serious. We have phone numbers, first names, last names. I mean, there's even Sam, the woman who crashed into me. So we've got that data, we've got then call logs, and so we get first name, last name, the phone number that was called, time and date, down to the second of when the call was made. We then wanted to take this information and go, well, everyone, we're about providing evidence and not just talking about things, but actually having the evidence to back it up. So we went, well, let's jump on on social media. People go on, you need to lock your stuff down, it's dangerous, don't put all this stuff out there. So quick Facebook search. We validated the location data that we had for the workplace was in fact bang smack on the name that was on the Facebook profile. The partner name matched the Bluetooth logs and on Facebook. The children's names matched the connectors, the names that were connected and listed in the iPhone, and they're also visible profiles on Facebook. And even down to, we got a birth date. We actually have a birth date for the owner of the vehicle because the partner put a link on, saying happy whatever birthday on this day. Crazy. We have their address. So we look at GPS information. So this just gives you a snapshot, but from July 2025 to November 2025, 66 individual trips were able to pull out, representing over 44,000 GPS points. Crazy. And locations were pretty much, we call them breadcrumbs, but they're pretty much dropped every couple of seconds. So we can take those, we can plot them onto a map or on Google Earth, and we get a fairly good outlay of journey details. We also get clusters, so we can actually say like they frequent here at these times. So we can get Parramatta, Sydney CBD, and then Bondi. What we didn't find, and I think it's just simply there was no Wi-Fi creds in there. We were like, surely they've connected it, but in this case they hadn't connected it to a Wi-Fi access point. So we were curious. So we put it all back together. We stood up our own access point. We then connected, and then we turned it off, and then tore it all back down again, did another dump of memory, and lo and behold, we find our access point name there, plus the password in clear text. That's crazy. So what that's saying as well, if someone, if you've got a Ford Ranger and you've gone and go, oh, look, I keep getting bugged about this, I should really update, or I want to get updates of maps. 2 years ago, you connected it to your home Wi-Fi and you got those updates and then forgot about it. All of a sudden, 2 years later, you forget about it. Those clear text password for your Wi-Fi is still locked in that head unit. So then we moved on to the factory reset, and this was kind of interesting. We were like, okay, well, there's all this data. Surely when you factory reset the head unit, it all goes away. people use this when you're selling a car, you factory reset it. When you're in a hire car, some people reset it to wipe the indication, your data that if you've synced your phone up. So we clicked master reset, turned it all back on, went through the prompts, resetting to factory defaults. So what we found, some data was entirely removed. So the data that was accessible through the UI, user interface, it was gone. So you can no longer see synced phones, there's no contact lists, call logs were gone, and and the Wi-Fi creds, they were gone. I was hoping they were there, but they weren't. So they were wiped. However, there still remained an enormous amount of data, personal information, after the factory reset ran. So core system logs were still there, all the historical GPS data was there, there's Wi-Fi records in terms of what Wi-Fi access points the car saw, Bluetooth connection history was still there, so when devices connected, it was all there. Phone numbers were still there, and some driving-related data. That's crazy. So what we're saying is, this is the one method that a consumer has to delete their personal details off that device, but it doesn't delete everything off it. So I don't know really where that leaves us as a consumer. Maybe there's devil in the detail. It's not a factory wipe, it's a factory reset, so it's resetting settings, but I don't know. And I think a lot of us get sucked into this, well, if I do a factory reset on my phone, that wipes everything. So, I don't know, there's a question there. So then we went, well, what other vehicles could we look at? Connected vehicles. And I was excited about this as well. I was like, oh, I'd like to buy one of these. A BYD Shark 6. They're everywhere. And they look kind of cool. So we went through the same thing. We started enumerating and triaging attack vectors. And what we found was, well, okay, it's a connected vehicle. This might be interesting. And now what people may think is, okay, a head unit, that's where the connectivity happens, but it actually happens within the telematics box. So the telematics box is, think of it like a little, almost, it's like a phone without a screen on it. It is the thing that provides the cellular connectivity for the vehicle to the outside world. It has connectivity to the LAN, LIN, and in some cases the USB networks of the vehicle, and often, referred to as a T-box or a TCU. So there's a lot of manufacturers out there. Between LG and Continental, they make up 50%. So you might be aware of, LG is the big LG company. Continental make a lot of ECUs for vehicles. But what is probably unknown is there is a huge rapid growth of Chinese OEMs starting to come onto the market to support all these Chinese EVs and other vehicles being built and shipped around the world. So there's a bunch of those out there as well. So they have a SIM card. In many cases, it's an eSIM, so an embedded SIM. And there's like a roaming agreement that happens. It's kind of like how Kindle and Amazon used to do it. But in some cases, in the case of the BYD Shark and like Tesla, for example, they still use traditional SIMs. They connect through the ecosystem of a cellular network. They don't, this is important, they aren't internet routable. So they do sit on their own APN. We have done testing and the networks seem to do a fairly good job even of client isolation. So I can't jump in one car and then talk to another car from what we've seen, at least in Australia. But if you're sitting there with your app and you've installed the BYD app and you go unlock doors and you're like, oh, this is going to be cool. It goes up to the cloud, through the telco infrastructure, back down to the car. So there is this, and it jumps that way through the cloud infrastructure, through the private network. But then this means that telematics box has to sit both on the cellular network and on the CAN bus so that it can interact with, say, the door locks. It sends a CAN bus message and it goes unlock doors. But the crazy thing is there's all this other stuff that sits on that CAN bus that, again, there is a gateway in the car, but the question still remains, what can the telematics box talk? And it really depends on the car. So for us, we're like, this is a prime target for attackers. You combine the fact that it's sitting on the cellular network and has CAN and LIN interfaces on it. Actually compromising this in a car could be catastrophic. So we're like, let's focus on the T-box. So what we found is it was extremely hard to find a second-hand T-box for a Shark BYD. Simply, there's just not enough of them. Not enough people are crashing them, not enough are being wrecked. So after a number of attempts and a number of Facebook Marketplace, I guess, fraud, people posing and trying to get money out of us, which we didn't fall for, we ended up just going to a local dealer and going, please just sell us one. And so for $800, we got a telematics box. Awesome. So doing a teardown, we got serial access, we did a bunch of other things because we wanted to assess, you know, can we get a shell up on it? Can we actually look at, once we got it powered on the bench, can we actually look at, well, what protocols does it use? What services are listening? What's exposed on that cellular interface? And then really, what is at the heart of it? And the heart is what we find is, in this case, a QuickTel cellular module. So I don't know if anyone's seen these. There's more and more floating around now. But under the hood, essentially, it's got a Qualcomm chip in it. It has flash memory like we had before, but it is running a closed-sourced Qualcomm firmware. So we actually went back to QuickTel and went, hey, we've got one of these. Could you give us the password, for example? So we actually got a shell, but it had it's a password-protected prompt. They're like, oh no, that's proprietary. You need to go back to the vendor, and they can provide it to you. And we're like, well, BYD's not going to, you know, or the telematics box manufacturer's not going to give that to us. But in essence, we had no way to physically get onto this device to verify what it was listening to or exposing, and it's running a Qualcomm closed-source firmware. We could boot the thing into fast boot, which was kind of cool, so it is running some form of Android under the hood, but this is it. So this really puts it now into this category of advanced data extraction and reverse engineering. So when I say advanced data extraction, it really is that we actually take the chip off, we had to solder wires to individual balls or pads on the chip, and then extract it, not like we had with the old UFI reader out of the Ford. But then it goes into having to then assess and then reverse engineer, essentially, what's going on in that firmware. So if we revisit the security risk, we've not only got a telematics box that is connected to the outside world, it has CAN and LIN interfaces, but now it's running closed source Chinese firmware on it, essentially. So we're like, okay, well, that's pretty scary. What else is out there like this in the passenger vehicle world? So where's the motorcycles? And, you know, if anyone rides a motorcycle here, a Chiggy is a big thing at the moment. It's actually, they call it a smart riding system. It gives you Google Maps and all this other stuff, but it also allows you to take calls, listen to Spotify, but the picture on the right is essentially, it connects directly into the CAN line. BMW exposes this, for example, and it has complete access to the CAN line. This thing is crowdfunded, it's built in Hong Kong, and it ships with a Hong Kong SIM. Unbelievable. Media have raised some concerns, and you would have seen this over the last sort of 12 months. Back in November 2025, Danish authorities identified this loophole in Chinese buses and these kill switches. There's lots of talk of that. The UK also raised issues, and all of a sudden Australia caught on a few months later. Oh, we've got a lot of these buses. We're from Canberra. It was big in Canberra. We reached out to everyone, all the transport ministers, all the local and federal, and it's interesting. We got not a lot of response, but also the other response we got was, we're doing an internal investigation, which you see here. So anyway, there's buses that could be an issue. But then we think, well, we look at the T-box, but what else could have detrimental effect to Australia? We talked about, you know, this isn't just it's connected vehicles, not just cars. So we go, okay, well, Semi-trailers, our country relies on this. Bosch T-Box. Waste management. All the garbage trucks, they all have T-boxes. So when you start looking at attackers and the consequence of a compromise, all of a sudden, if you can stop trucks shipping produce and supplies to grocery stores and picking up garbage, that starts getting really serious. I have to look back to COVID and we experienced that firsthand. Let's go bigger. If you really wanted to cause pain and have a negative impact on the Australian economy, go to our exports. So you look at mining and hauling. So this is a big Komatsu hauler. It actually sits on this contract system. This actually runs over satellite, but it has a telematics box. Some interesting stats, and now this is a little bit, they're from August 2024, but I thought they're important. These are straight from Komatsu, and so throughout the 10 Rio Tinto mines, well, there are 10 Rio Tinto mines in Australia, that they actually have 300 of these autonomous hauling system trucks running. But they make up 80% of what's being hauled out on a daily basis. That's crazy. And you just look at the figures, like 8.9 million operating hours and moving 4.8 billion tonnes of material. These all are connected. They have telematics boxes in them, and we don't really know what's going on. And if you think, you go ransomware, that's big, if ransomware hits something like that. If they're sitting on the can lines, they can affect safety of the trucks, they can drive them off. But you even think just data that's coming out, and you maybe not even have to do anything to the truck. Knowing how much is being hauled out of a mine pretty much instantaneously, you could play the markets with that. So there's a lot of different aspects to this. Same with agriculture and farming. So again, John Deere Combine Harvester, this is a telematics box we've been looking at. Again, over-fertilising something, or just straight out ransomware and issuing a kill command. Like, people get onto these, into these APNs and can expose these vulnerabilities. It's crazy. So it seems like something that the telco maybe should care about if it's sitting on a bearer, sitting on the cellular network. So Telstra, we actually found this at the beginning of the year. We're like, oh, awesome. Telstra has a certified embedded module list. That's great. It has a bunch of embedded modules. And we even found the BYD Shark module in there, so that's good, because I think it does have a Telstra SIM in it, so you'd hope it was. But the problem with this is they're only concerned with that module having a negative impact on the network. Does it affect how the network operates if we have a bunch of these on there? Not, are there any cybersecurity risks associated with it? Okay, so surely there's cybersecurity policies that look to mitigate some of this. So in Australia, we do have a Cybersecurity Act of 2024. It looks at a bunch of things, default passwords, basically how to disclose vulnerabilities to manufacturers, but also how those manufacturers patch and do a bunch of things. Unfortunately, it specifically defines and outlines that a road vehicle isn't covered under that act. So that's not great. But that's crazy. So a connected washing machine in your house has cybersecurity regulations. Your car in your driveway doesn't. So we go push out further, and we look at ISO standards. So you look at, there is an ISO 21434 international cybersecurity standard for road vehicles. Published in 2021, applies to the entire supply chain, and it's focused, and the life cycle of the vehicle, but it is focused on manufacturers implementing a cybersecurity management system. But it's voluntary. So then we dig a bit further, and there are UN regulations. So UN Regulation 155, and it has a 156 sister regulation, they are actually legally binding. So, and mandatory in EU countries, Japan, and they're starting to adopt, they've got a plan to adopt it and phase it in the UK. So it requires the manufacturer to have a certified CSMS, and it actually uses the ISO 21434 to demonstrate that. The regulation 156 pretty much looks at the update management system, the process of updating the car. So it's over-the-air updates, it covers physical, so your USB, and mandatory version control. And it essentially assures that when you apply a patch, it doesn't have a detrimental effect on the vehicle. So it's all very confusing, but essentially you have the ISO 21434 outlines how to build a secure vehicle. The R155 outlines what manufacturers must do to prove to regulators the vehicle is secure. And R156 ensures software updates to those vehicles are managed securely. Unfortunately, none of these are applicable in Australia. We do have in Australia the Australian design rules. So national vehicle standards, they cover safety, theft, anti-theft, emissions, and they apply to new vehicles, if we actually made them here, or imported new and second-hand vehicles. And they cover a range of things: seat belts, anchor points, lights, emissions, rollover protection. There is currently no ADR addressing vehicle cybersecurity. Just crazy. So even if Australia adopted the ISO standards or the UN regulations, there's a fundamental flaw in all of this. The standards require manufacturers to have a cybersecurity plan, but they don't actually need to demonstrate that it's actually achieving the end goal. It's just that they have those processes in place. So actually the car can come out the other end and there is still no actual clarification that that car is actually more secure at the end of that process. And this is why our shores are getting flooded by, in this case, Chinese vehicles, because they're unchecked. No, they don't need to jump through any hoops in this country. And then we end up with BYD stockpiling in abandoned car parks. So there are a bunch of solutions to mitigate some of these risks that the telematics system proposes. We can put hardware things in place, in line, we can force security audits, we can implement APIs that manufacturers need to abide by, and we can even approach the service providers and work with them more on how to secure that ecosystem. But all that requires support from government and policymakers to initiate change. So consumers, I guess, shouldn't just trust vehicle manufacturers are doing the right thing, and hopefully you can see some of that, even with Ford. But without support from government and the policymakers, we're not going to see any meaningful change here in Australia. And fundamentally, this is critical. An independent validation and verification process must accompany any introduction of new policies or regulations. We need to check, just like NCAP checks safety, we need to do something like that for cybersecurity in vehicles. So a parting gift. If you didn't think that was bad enough, I don't know, I was out and looking at my switchboard in the house. I was like, there's an LTE antenna that's hanging off that. I was like, oh no. So it's not just connected vehicles. Smart meters in Australia as well. So this is a smart meter. It's used in probably a large proportion of Australian houses. If you actually open it up, there's a nice little green box, and then inside that, oh look, it's a QuickTel cellular module. So again, what regulations, what is that thing doing? It's closed sourced, has a Qualcomm chip inside. So if you're interested in, there is a lot more technical detail. We actually put a lot up on our blogs, on our webpage. If you're interested in the Ford or anything else, we're pulling apart Komatsu at the moment, as well as the BYD stuff will go up there. Anyone from mining, Rio Tinto, I'd love to talk to you. Come chat to me afterwards. But you can also reach out to us on emails. With that, I don't know, I guess I've got 5 minutes, says on the clock, but go to questions.
Thank you. Big round of applause.
Are you the reason why the IC now has updates on the smart vehicles?
Look, I'll say no. It's really hard to get people to care, and I won't say everyone we've reached out and everyone we show this to, and this is why we're here, we need to have an informed discussion, but the problem is people put off and go, I still can't secure my emails, I'm not even going to look at my vehicles. But that's not good enough. That's how we ended up with issues with SCADA, that's how we ended up with the IoT issues. So hopefully this spurs change.
Just a question around, say, relay attacks against key fobs. Do you see any sort of progression in defence against those styles of attack? Because I see quite often that modern cars, you don't need to break in and steal the keys.
Correct.
Just hole up a relay, run away.
Really good question. I will say, and this is why validation is so important, we have done research, we do research, and we check implementations just because a new car says that it does something. I can tell you now, replay attack still works on 2026 model cars. I'm not going to tell you which ones, but it's often overlooked. And yeah, it's a scary place to be. You know, you just have to look at the Land Cruisers. You shouldn't be able to do, and essentially you look at that. There's nothing crazy about it. They drill a hole in the side of the car and then they send messages on the CAN line, the same way that the telematics box is doing from the cellular network.
Daniel, really insightful presentation, and thanks for sharing. Feels like a fun world you play in, but it's a scary world as well. You touched on Rio. Rio, they've just lent into the China supply chain, 4.5 billion. So they're either aware of the risks, have evaluated the risks, and have said, you know what, we'll still keep buying from over there.
Yep.
Closer to home, we're going to see in the next 6 years more building in southeast Queensland than we've ever seen before. The concept of acquired risk. You've got to build a stadium, you've got to build it cheaply, the light, the process control. There's no governance or regulation in that. The weapon of mass destruction is actually the weapon of mass disruption. That's the concern.
100%.
That's the concern, and no one's looking at it. I love your view.
Yep, no, 100% correct. And the scary thing is, you look at mining, you look at agriculture. Only now are they just starting to put there's ISO regulations or standards against them, and they're just going through first draft. The only actual ISO regulation or ISO standard that we could find actually applicable that's actually being used, and this is the absolute, you look at catastrophic outcomes of compromise in that, is airplanes. So like the manufacture and the cybersecurity concepts of that, they've actually got an ISO standard that's being implemented. Why is it not there for vehicles? Why is it not there for, you know, I would call mining and, as you say, construction, anything like that, shipping, transportation, it's critical infrastructure, but everyone seems to point the finger in different ways and say, well, that's not up to me.
All right, we'll make this the last question because
Yep.
we'll have to do handover.
Oh, this is just actually an answer to the question about the relay attacks. Tesla introduced ultra-wideband Bluetooth in their later models, which can detect the extra delay introduced by those relay attacks, and they claim 100% protection or near 100% protection for that, but obviously, as you said, that needs to be verified.
Yeah, and there's all these challenges. We've got ultra-wideband coming on. I haven't even touched on V2X and V2V, and so your car will talk to your street signs and actually find out what the speed limit is. So yeah, it's a brave new world, but again, unverified, unchecked. I will say Tesla are doing a great job, and it's because they're just getting pummeled from cybersecurity researchers. So yeah, anyway, thank you.
Yeah, another round of applause for Daniel Reschuk.